I didn't use banks, I didn't borrow money, and I didn't even use my credit, and I had no money. And I still got this rental property. Let me show you how I did it. Hey, my name is Shane So, and today I'm going to be telling you how I got my very first rental property when I first began. And honestly, I had no money. I honestly had no idea how to get a loan from the banks. And this was way before I got into my 400 single family homes and 150 multifamily, my commercial, we had laundromats, car washes, and even billboards. So before I got into the entire business, it all started with this very first rental property. So I kind of wanted to tell you a little bit of the story of how I found the deal, how the whole interaction went, and how I was able to get it. More importantly, with no money down and with seller financing. So let's go to the iPad and let's begin. All right. So how this happened is I found a property that was for sale for $95,000. And this home was owned by a landlord. It was actually a really nice lady. And when I contacted her, I said, hey, look, I see you have this home for sale and I'm interested. And she said, well, I'm going through the middle of an eviction, but it'll be ready kind of on Friday. I think the tenant was leaving on that Friday. I said, fine, I'd love to come take a look. And she said, come out. And I met her on Saturday. So I pulled up to the house, and right when I got to the house, and this is actually very important, if there's one thing that I would say that has been the reason to any success for me getting any deals in this manner is you're definitely doing some type of relationship. Okay, so I don't want to ruin it or go too quick, but I was able to get this house with seller financing, meaning the seller became the bank for me. I didn't have to get any loan. I didn't have to run my credit. I didn't have to do tax returns and go through all that. I literally just made a really good relationship talking to the seller and let me pay her monthly to buy the home. So let's dive deep. So she said $95,000 is about what she wants. And I pulled up to the house and she was very stressed outside. And honestly, the tenants had trashed the home. I pulled up. I remember I'm nervous. I'm a young guy. I had never done this before in my life. Never. This is the first time I'd ever talked to a seller, actually. And when I pulled up, the grass was about 3 foot high. There was garbage outside. Like I said, this landlord, the seller, had rented it before and the tenants had literally, trashed the home. She just did an eviction the day before. So pulled up and noticed that she was stressed. And the very first thing that I did was I just showed her empathy. I was like, I am so sorry that this happened to you. And I did. I felt really bad for her. It was a lady, maybe mid 60s. So she was a very young lady, probably just bought this for retirement. And, she was the most stressful part of real estate is definitely something like this. So I said, hey, look, I'm very sorry that this happened to you. And I didn't bash the home. I just said, this home is a beautiful home, great area. It's just a shame that this happened to you and that the tenants left it in this condition. So basically with that one sentence, I was able to say, great home, it's a beautiful home, not bashing the home, but letting her see that I did notice that it needed some work. So the very first thing that we did is we opened the door, and as soon as you walked into the home, I'm talking about the smell came and just hit you. As soon as you walked in, it was the kitchen, rotten food, trash, whatever it was. It had a horrible smell. And I'm like, man, do I really want to get in investing? I was like, woof. Walked straight into the home. We were in the kitchen, and I remember her name was Miss Ruth. And I said, Miss Ruth, it looks like they trashed the place. And she said, yeah, can you believe that they would do this to me? I was really nice to them. I gave them a place to live, telling me those things. And I just said, look, I am so sorry that this happened to you. And basically, when we were in the home, I noticed a few things. Well, lots of things, I guess. It was trashed. It had a smell, but also like some of the floor was drooping a little bit. It was kind of a little bit loose. And I could just tell that honestly, this would not be a good moment to just say, hey, look, show me the home. I could tell she was definitely upset. And I said, Miss Ruth, let's just sit here and talk a minute. I'd love to get to know you a little bit. Let's just talk and you fill me in on, your life. Let's just fill me in on everything. And she said, okay. So we stood there in the nasty kitchen. We just talked. And I remember the moment that she just kind of slowly calmed down. Like honestly, that stress, she still had the stress, but it just kind of abated some. And I could just, not saying her guard was put down, but she definitely relaxed. And as she relaxed, I just said, well, Miss Ruth, it was great to get to know you. I've learned a lot about you. You've lived here in this town for a long time. Looks like you have 7 or 8 rental properties. You bought these just for, retirement, and you're definitely going through a stressful moment here. So here's the thing. While we're walking through the home, I would just point out a little bit of things about the home. And now at that time, I had my notepad. I had my notepad with me. And again, I can't stress enough, I did not bash the property. And I can only tell you for what I do and what I've done. And I would suggest you do the same. Never bash the property. Be very empathetic to the seller's situation. And number 3, when you're walking around, keep a notepad and you can write those problems on your notepad while you're looking at the property. So while we're walking around, doorknobs are missing. There's holes holes in the wall, there's garbage. And she's pointing out something. I'm saying, oh, and I'm making noises and just letting her see I'm writing this stuff down. And I did write it kind of big. I didn't just write it small. I wrote it big, like doorknobs, hole in the wall. She sees me writing these things, but I'm being very nice. And we walked around the entire house, and the bathroom, it was dirty, you know, the living room, everything. All the bedrooms were kind of trashed. And what we did is we got back to the kitchen, which definitely was the most, you know, it was the dirtiest home. It was the nastiest room in the house. And this is something I still do to this day, is I go to the nastiest room in the house, and that's where I negotiate. So if we go to the iPad here, she was asking $95,000. Okay, now I didn't know this at the time, but I had a basic idea. What I didn't know was how to pull comps. But what I knew is that it was basically worth maybe $135,000 if it was fixed up. Okay, so this is what it could be worth, and this is called the ARV, the after repair value. Okay. Anyway, when I was in the kitchen, I said, look, I know you're asking for $95,000. And that's when I said some stuff to her. I said, look, what would you be willing to sell it to me for if I take it in as is condition? And she said, you know what? I would do 85. All right. And here's another tip. Always thank them for being very flexible. I said, Miss Ruth, thank you so much for being flexible on the price. I really appreciate it. And I'm very sure we're going to be able to make a deal work. I always want to let them know that I'm excited I'm going to make it work, because a lot of sellers in these positions are like, oh, they're going to waste my time. It's not going to work. So I want to let her know I'm excited. I know we'll be able to make it work. Again, this is my first house. Okay. I'm telling you what we do now, but even in this time, I was like, thank you so much for working with me. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Then we went outside, and when we went outside, there's garbage outside. We walked around and noticed that the air conditioner was old. The roof needed to be replaced. There is tons of garbage that these people had left. They must have lived there a long time. And anyway, we spent a lot of time outside, and it was actually pretty hot that day. There's some moist spots on the ground, I guess, where water had collected. And she was more stressed outside. So we went back inside where it was a little bit more cooler, just smelled. And I said, Miss Ruth, it's hot outside, Anyway, before I go outside and call my partners or my team, what do you really need if I'm able to buy this property in as is condition? We'll do the roof, we'll do the air condition. Honestly, don't clean out nothing. We'll get people to come in here and clear it all out, and we'll close when you want. And she said, and I'll never forget this, she says, I will sell it for $45,000. In my mind, I never in my wildest dreams thought she would go from $95,000 to $85,000 to $45,000. So that's the next thing. Before you step outside or before you give them anything, always ask, what do you really need to let this house go? Okay, I always say that. All right, so anyway, she said $45,000. Now, in my mind, I was like, whoo, man, she dropped really a lot. And I was thinking in my mind, I know that I want to do this creative financing thing, but maybe I could do a fix and flip. Oh, no, I don't have any money. I had all this stuff going through my mind, and honestly, I didn't know what I was doing. And I had a cheap purchase and sell agreement that I had never done in my entire life. And I stepped outside. And I remember the moment, I just closed my eyes. Oh, Lord God. I was praying, Lord God, please, Lord, if this is your will, let it be. If it's not, close the door. And I was just nervous. I said, Lord, I'm about to go in and negotiate this seller financing terms. I've never done this before. Please help me, be with me. So I prayed a little bit. I did call my brother and I talked to him about the deal just for a moment, like 2 minutes or a minute. Hung up and I said, okay, I'm going to go do this. So I stepped inside the house. And I said, Miss Ruth, great news. I think that we're going to be able to get a deal. Just talk to my partner, my brother. And I said, here's the only issues that we have is if we're willing to take this property in as is condition, okay, you don't have to clean out anything. We'll pay for all the repairs, all the remodel, which could take a pretty good bit of money because it needs a new roof, air conditioning, it needs a lot of work. Would you be willing to let us pay you monthly payments for a while until we get what needs to get fixed, and then cash you out later? And then she actually said, okay, so we'll go back to the whiteboard here. And $45,000, basically, she ended up saying, honestly, I've never done that seller financing stuff, but I really need all my money now. And I said, I completely understand. The issue is it does need repairs, the air conditioner. I don't know if it meets, I know now it's called HUD, like HUD standards, which means I don't know if a bank will give a loan. So I said, Ms. Ruth, I don't know if a bank will give a loan on a property in this condition. Beautiful home, great area. And we are buying in this area, but I don't know if a bank will give us a loan. Would you be willing to let us fix everything and then cash you out later? She did agree, and she said, well, look, I would need about $10,000. I would need $10,000 down. Okay. And then we would come up with a monthly payment. Okay. The thing is, the whole reason I tried this, I'm just going to be honest with you, is I found a YouTube video, probably like you are finding this one. I like to think that I'm planting a seed, by the way, that maybe you'll be able to get your first deal using the experience that I've had. But I found this video of this old man, horrible audio, horrible video, and it's a very unprofessional video. But he talked about talking to sellers and getting it seller finance. These little things were going through my mind. And he said, you should be able to get it with no money down. So I remember thinking, well, I can get it with no money down. Plus, I don't have money to be able to pay her $10,000. So I went back and I said, look, Miss Ruth, I know that you said that you want $10,000 down. And the reason why you probably want that is to show that someone has skin in the game so that they'll take it serious. Unfortunately, this property needs $20,000 to $30,000 worth of repair. What I'm going to ask you, so I don't have to pay, and this is a very powerful word, I don't want to pay a double down payment. Okay, now what does that mean, a double down payment? Meaning this, I would have to pay $10,000 down to her and then come out another bit of money, $10,000, $20,000, or $30,000 to repair the property. Okay, so I repeated this to her. Miss Ruth, I understand that you want skin in the game. That's why you want me to pay $10,000 down. The thing is I don't want to have to pay a double down payment and pay you 10 and then come out 20, 30 grand. And then it's going to take us a while to fix everything. Of course, we're going to take it as is. We got to clear everything out. What I suggest is let me, with my repairs, if I spend 10, 20, 30,000, I think that's enough skin in the game. Would you agree? And she said, yes. Okay. So what we ended up, no $10,000 down. We came up to terms of us paying $45,000 for the price. Okay. That was the purchase price. Zero money down. Now I haven't owned it yet, by the way. This is still on the purchase and sell agreement. And I'll also tell you how I filled out the purchase and sell agreement. The monthly payments, I said, look, I'll pay you, $286.67 principal only. Okay. And I'm telling you the terms now, then I'll tell you how I explained it to her. I also told her on here that we would have 30 days due diligence. Due diligence means I would have 30 days to kind of do my own due diligence, which is basically I can get an inspector to check the property to see if this is something we want to move on. If not, we could always cancel. That's basically what a due diligence period is. Okay. I also put closing date. Okay. Is in 30 days. Okay. Now, this is what I do now is I always say due diligence ends on the day of closing. So we'll rewrite that in just a moment, how I suggest you do it. And then I said the first payment. Now, I'm not an attorney, by the way. This is just me telling you what I did, okay? But first payment would be due 60 days after closing. So let me just preface this real quick. We have 30 days due diligence and 30 days to close. And then I don't owe my first payment until 60 days after, meaning I have 90 days to pay my first payment of $286. Okay. All right. Also, I paid $1 earnest money. All right. So what is earnest money? It's basically a refundable deposit. Okay. Now, I'm just going to be honest with you. Okay. I know what earnest money is now. Then I really did not understand it because this is my first time. I just knew that this old guy on YouTube said, you have to pay money to the seller when you sign the purchase and sell agreement to make the contract be binding. If you don't, it's not binding. And on the certain purchase and sell agreement that I had at the time, it had a place that says the seller could sign and say they received it. And when I saw it, I said, oh, shoot, I didn't bring a check or anything. I literally reached in my pocket and pulled it out, $1. And I said, oh, here's $1 so we can make it binding. You can buy a Dr. Pepper. I have no idea. I tell uncle jokes. I've been saying it since I was a little kid. I'm just cheesy guy. I still don't know why I said go buy a Dr. Pepper. I think I was just nervous. Okay. All right. Here's something pretty interesting too. Miss Ruth did not want to sign any type of contract. In fact, before I even showed her this agreement to put these terms down, she said, I don't want to sign any contract. I want my attorney to see it. And I said, you know what? Honestly, no problem. How about this though? And I pulled out the cheap purchase and sell agreement. And I said, this one's a standard purchase and sell agreement because that's what it said. And I said, how about this? You help me fill this out. Okay. So I even said, your handwriting's probably better. And I handed her the pen. I said, let's see if we can figure this out together. Fast forward to the end, she ended up agreeing to signing this purchase and sell agreement because of, I guess, how the process went. She could tell that I was just saying, hey, look, let's fill this out together. It wasn't me just filling out something and handing it to her. So I said, okay, here's the purchase and sell agreement. Okay, who's the buyer? buyer, me, Shane, so, okay, seller, Ruth, I don't want to say her last name, address, 1 blank, blank, blank street, okay, and purchase price, $45,000, and then is basically all these terms. Okay, we're going to pay 0 down. Buyer will pay monthly payments of $286 until paid off. Oh, and I did have a balloon, so I do want to put that. Now, what is a balloon? Some of you guys already probably know what a balloon is, but a balloon is this. Let's just say that on a traditional loan that you get from the bank, it's a 30-year mortgage, okay? If they say, well, it's a 30-year mortgage with a 3-year balloon, means you're going to pay monthly payments as if you're going to pay principal and interest over 30 years. But whatever you owe at year 3, you owe the full balance. So for example, you get a loan for $200,000 and after 3 years, you've paid it down to $190,000. At year 3, you owe the full $190,000. It means you got to pay cash or refinance the property. With this, she did want a balloon. If I was you though, just so I can say it, try not to pay a balloon if you're buying a property seller finance. So in this one, I think I had a 5-year balloon. And then I said, okay, yeah, 30 days due diligence, closing date, 30 days, first payment due 60 days after closing. And payments, I remember this too, payments due on 15th of every month. Okay. Why did I do that? Is because I knew that I was going to buy this property, rent it out, and have someone pay me on the 1st to the 5th every month. That would give me time to collect the money, put it in the bank account, make sure it clears, and then pay the seller, if that makes sense. Okay. All right. Now, I do want to kind of jump in here and show you exactly what we're doing, because a lot of people are like, ooh, I don't understand seller finance. Why would someone do that? And how are they protected? Let me draw this real quick. Here is the house. Okay. And I'm even going to draw a door, a little doorknob, and I'm even going to draw a window. Let me make that nice. Okay. Basically, what I'm doing, and this house was paid off, by the way, means the seller owed nothing to the bank. There's no mortgage or anything. She owned it free and clear. What I did is once we closed, this is what the title company, escrow company, or the attorney will write up for you. Once you turn in your purchase seller, they'll write up all the documents. But basically, the seller will have what they call a first lien position. Again, I'm not an attorney. I'm not giving any legal advice. Just telling you kind of how I see it, okay, and how it goes. Okay. So first lien position, seller is in first lien, and they basically own a mortgage. So it's just like they're a bank. If anything, you could actually tell this seller, hey, I'm going to upgrade you from landlord to banker. It's now not going to be just active or semi-passive. It's completely passive. She's really just going to receive a check every month and not have to do any repairs, maintenance, tax, insurance, nothing. She just gets a check. Very easy. On this side, they're going to issue what they call a warranty deed, some type of deed, okay? And you're going to take title to the property. So this is you, okay? And you're going to make monthly payments to the seller, okay? Now, if you do not make a payment, the seller can then put you in foreclosure and take back the property. That's basically how it works. So that is seller financing. Now, how is the seller protected if the house catches fire? And that's what she asked me. What if the house catches fire? What if a tree cuts it in half and stuff like that? And I was just like, yeah, that'd be awful. But here's the thing. I'm going to add her as loss payee on insurance. So that's the same thing as the banks do. Wells Fargo, Chase, all the big banks. When they give someone a mortgage in first lien position like her, they're also on the insurance policy. So if it burns down, they're going to be protected. Okay. So we're protecting the seller the same way the banks are getting protected. Okay. All right. So that is technically the seller financing. Okay. So now we have this under contract. Okay. She signs this contract. Sorry, my handwriting is awful. Okay. She signed the contract. I don't own the home yet. I have 30 days due diligence, 30 days to close. And now I want to tell you some of the options that we have. Let me tell you some of the options, then I'll tell you what I did, okay? There's so much equity. If it's worth $135, okay, and I'm able to buy it for $45, I could sell this contract to another investor. For example, I could say, hey, look, if you pay me $20,000, I'll sell you my contract for $45. So that means they've come out $65. $20,000 to buy the contract, and then they can buy it, fix it, and sell it. That could be that. That's one way, okay? And that is called wholesale. You could wholesale. The other thing I can do, if I had some money or I wanted to bring in a partner or whatever, or private lender, I could literally just fix and flip it myself. Fix and flip. I could literally just come in and repair it a little bit and then rent it out. But I didn't have any money, okay? or I could have brought in a partner. There's also something called the BRRRR strategy, which I'm not going to go in this here, but this like in depth here. But basically, I could have bought it, rehabbed it, rented it out, refinanced it and pulled all the money out and then some, and then you repeat it again over and over again. Okay, that's one way. What I decided to do is go exactly what, as you can tell, I was following this old man's footsteps, exactly what he said. And what he said do is to lease it out with an option. It's two different agreements, by the way. It's not one, it's two. Okay? All right? And this is basically what I did and how this worked out. All right, so I had these terms. It's under contract. I didn't even own the home yet. I started marketing the property and I put it up for sale for $135,000. Now, here's a special note that I just want to make sure that's clear. I did not fix anything on this property, okay? I listed it for what it's worth. And interesting enough, a young gentleman reached out to me and said, hey, look, I'm interested in this home. And I told him, I said, look, I will give you a deal of $5,000 off of this and charge you $130,000. And I'm going to lease it to you with an option to buy. He didn't have a ton of money. Plus, I knew he was going to do a ton of repairs. So what we agreed on is he paid me something called an option fee or option consideration. Okay. And I'll explain a little bit more of that in just a moment. And he paid me $7,000 down. He then had the option to buy for $123,000 at any time in 36 months. Okay? And then we did a different agreement, which is the lease. Okay? Which we agreed on $1,000 per month. Okay, now I'm going to tell you why someone would do this, by the way, but let's go and talk about some of the numbers because that's the most exciting part. Is number one, I was coming out zero money down. Okay, zero money down. And on the day of closing, I knew that I would have to pay closing costs of $686 or something like that. I was able to use this option fee to pay that $686 in closing fees because when I say I had nothing, I had nothing. So I was able to basically profit $7,000 minus the $686. I was able to make about $6,000, 200 something bucks, $300. Okay. I'm going to pay $6,300-ish the day I closed. So the day I closed, I used their money to pay the $686. Okay. I made $6,300. Not only that, this is on the day of closing. 30 days later, I got the full rent, $1,000, and did not have to pay the seller. Why? Because I didn't owe my first payment until 60 days. Okay. Then the next month goes by. The tenant paid me $1,000 and I paid out $286. So let's just say it's $700 and some change. I was plus $700. Okay. And the other cool thing is because I had bought this for $45,000 and they had the option of $123. I'm going to grab my phone here. You can see how bad my math is here quick. Okay, so $123,000 minus 45. When they cash me out, I would make $78,000. So let's just take this into perspective. I could have bought this property and wholesaled it and made $20,000. Like I said, that was one option. Could have wholesaled it and made $20,000 or maybe $30,000. I could have fixed it. I could have bought it, put in some time, and maybe made 60-ish or so, or less, because then you got realtors involved, or maybe they want you to repair something else or something like that. I could have burned it, but who knows what would have happened there. But in this, I made $6,000 the day that I bought it, $700 a month in cash flow, and I'm going to make $78,000 on the back end. Now, I don't want to go too much in the weeds, but if you do a fix and flip, you're going to pay tip-top taxes. I'm not a CPA or an accountant, but if you fix and flip, it's basically not real estate. You're going to pay pretty much ordinary income tax. Okay, you need to talk to your CPA. However, if you do rental property and you hold it for the certain time related to it, okay, you can do something they call a 1031. And there's certain rules you have to follow. I usually like to hold probably about 2 years or more. And if you're renting it and then it cashes out, you can then take whatever profit you made and do what they call a 1031 exchange and pretty much defer the tax and roll it into another property and pay no taxes right now. It's deferred, okay? So I could basically, on this, like on the whiteboard, if I make $78,000, I could put it into another property and upgrade my property and just keep going. There's certain rules you need to talk to your attorney or CPA. Okay. So this is technically how I did my first deal. I do want to go in and finish the story. I know this sounds like a lot because I love to nerd out about real estate, by the way, as you can tell. So bought the house, $45,000, zero down. I found a tenant buyer to pay $7,000 down and pay $1,000 a month. I'm cash flowing $700 a month, which is pretty cool. I made $6,300 up front. I'm looking to make $78,000 later on. Now, let's finish the story. Usually, if you buy a property and you're renting it out and the tenant doesn't pay, you got to kick them out. Then you got to go in and fix everything. It could take a couple weeks or a month or maybe 2 months to get the property back in shape. And then you got to list the property and get someone else in. And just this big headache. And you're paying your mortgage and payments and you're coming out of pocket all the time. That's usually how a regular rental works. In the case of this, I came up no money. I made $6,300 up front. I'm making good cash flow. What happened is something that usually is negative, but ended up being a positive. This tenant, after 6 months, left the property. And I forgot to mention this. This tenant, because I gave them a discount, they were supposed to do all the repairs and clean and cut the grass and everything. 6 months later, they disappeared. I didn't get my payment. I was like, oh my gosh, I got to deal with my first eviction. So I went out trying to meet with them. I tried to talk to them. They ghosted me. Honestly, they vanished. I always joke, they vanished. I have no idea where they went. They just never responded back to me. I did the whole dispossessory, which is basically like eviction process. And they had already left. They abandoned the property. So I got back possession of the property. And when I went back and got the property again, it was actually in perfect condition. Now, I made a mistake here, but it's okay. And I'm going to tell you what that is in just a moment. I was able to relist the property and I put it up for $135,000. This time, though, I found someone willing to give $15,000 down as an option fee. Oops. Hold on a second. Option fee. And they had the option to buy for $120,000. But this time, this tenant decided to pay $1,200 per month. Okay. All right. So basically, I just want to reiterate, I made $6,300 already. I had been cash flowing $700 for a while. Okay. Also, I got 1 month of rent without having to pay the mortgage. And then I had 1 month empty. And now I was able to make another $15,000. Okay. I still am going to get the cash out of 120. And now I'm actually making more than my original cash flow. I'm making close to $900. Okay. About 800 and something. So let's do 800-ish. Okay. Per month. All right. So this was actually my very first rental property. I'll never forget it. I learned so much on it. And again, it came from me watching a YouTube video just like this, but with an older gentleman. Horrible audio, horrible visuals, horrible everything. It was a very unprofessional video, but he gave such great knowledge. In fact, I've tried to find that video everywhere over the years, and I just cannot find it. Anyway, I hope that my experience can maybe help you get your first deal, or if you're already an experienced investor, I hope taking some of these things can help you structure and scale quicker your portfolio. And until next time, I'll see you soon.